I may get in trouble tonight. I may get in trouble for saying some of the things that I'm about to say. And some of you are going to completely disagree with me. Some of you may agree with me, and some of you may change your mind in one way or another. But irregardless, I'm going to rock some boats tonight. I am about to share with you some of my very unpopular opinions when it comes to reading comprehension. There are a lot of things out there, lots of research, do this, do that. And every teacher, every admin or book company, they all have their own opinions on what works best. And so I have some opinions that most people don't have. I call them my unpopular opinions. And I'm going to share this with you tonight. So we're going to stir the pot a little bit, and I hope you're ready for it because it's going to be pretty awesome. So welcome to the Sierra Harris Teaching Channel. I'm so excited to dive into this video with you, and we're going to be really getting into some crazy stuff. My first unpopular opinion is that Lexile levels are pointless. Yes, I said it. Lexile levels are pointless. Are some of you already ready to click off the screen like, I'm done with you? You may be, but hear me out. How much do we really know about Lexile levels? Let's dive into this a little bit so you understand why this is my opinion. Lexile levels are calculated, meaning they are quantitative, meaning they're based on numbers. So when you think about reading a text, how do you quantify a text? So when you think about how Lexile levels are actually created, it's all about numbers. It's about sentence length. It's about the number of words in the text. It's about how many times specific words are repeated. And I will give it this, it does include vocabulary. It does look at the vocabulary and, how complex of a word is being used, but it doesn't do it complete justice. So Lexile levels are all about numbers. So it doesn't take into consideration a lot of other things that, in my opinion, are so much more important. Things like content or themes or maturity level. So I've got some really good examples for you. Do you know the book, and you probably do, called The Grapes of Wrath? Pretty popular book, right? Would you teach that to your fourth grade class? Would that be a fourth grade novel? You're probably thinking, absolutely not. I read that in 12th grade. Yes, most teachers, students use this novel in 12th grade, but it has a Lexile level of 680. That is the Lexile level of a fourth grade class. That's insane. It is not appropriate for a fourth grade class. So it's not just about the quantity of the numbers that are calculated behind Lexile levels. There's so much more that goes into identifying whether or not a text is manageable and meaningful enough for your students to engage with. Here's another great example, and this is a book that I have not read. But there's a book called The War That Saved My Life. It's by 𝗦nci𝗰𝗶𝗹, and it is a Lexile level of 580, so even lower than Grapes of Wrath. And clearly that would put the book maybe into second, third grade range. This is a historical fiction novel, and it is 316 pages long, so pretty lengthy, right? Not really appropriate for second, third grade. And it discusses things such as abuse, war, physical disabilities for a child, and war, different things like that. So again, Lexile levels aren't not the end all be all. Look at the passage. You know where your students are with vocabulary. You know where your students need when it comes to content and theme and maturity level. You're going to know whether or not a passage is doable for your students. You don't really need a number to tell you, okay? It can be a baseline maybe. Maybe you use it as one of your sources, but it is not the end all be all determination on whether or not your class can read a passage. You can see I'm on my soapbox. I truly believe this. So let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts? I cannot wait to hear them. Another thing too about Lexile levels is that when it comes to nonfiction, this is really unique. Nonfiction Lexile levels are typically higher than the actual difficulty of the passage. And that is because, one, nonfiction tends to have longer sentence lengths than fiction. And also, nonfiction tends to have words that are not typically used in stories. You don't come across these words. We all know that nonfiction has unique vocabulary, right? That's one of the reasons why nonfiction is more difficult. But if you think about it, if you look at the Lexile levels of nonfiction texts or passages, they're going to come across much higher than the actual difficulty and complexity of the text. So you may think, my kids can't read this because it's at a higher Lexile level, but really they should be. If you really look into the research and dive into the Common Core standards for reading for every grade band gives specific recommendations on texts, and they give them based on Lexile levels. But if you really look at that, then that completely misconstrues what they should be reading. There's so much research out there that goes against Lexile levels and how much uncertainty they bring that it's really not worth even looking at them. My opinion. Okay, let's move on. I've talked about Lexile levels way too much. So another unpopular opinion of mine. Oh, I'm scared about this one. Reading stamina is not a thing. It's not a thing. We do not need to spend weeks on end at the beginning of the school year charting our reading stamina. Now, I will take one step back and say, I do agree that it has something to do with attention span at younger levels when you're teaching them to sit and read for a certain amount of time. However, when we get into grades like specifically second grade and beyond, stamina is not something that we should be worried about. It's not a thing. Instead, it's all about interest. Interest and investment and curiosity in the text I have in my hand. Reading stamina is not a thing if the right book is in the right reader's hands. If you put a book in my hands and I am not interested, my stamina, it will not be there. I am going to struggle, not because I'm struggling to read it, but because I'm not interested in this book at all. But you put a book in front of me that I am interested in and that grabs my attention, my stamina will be through the roof. I won't want to put the book down. So if you see students are struggling with stamina, it's not because they don't have stamina, they have the wrong book in their hand. They're not interested and invested in the book that they have, and we need to do more to get to know that student, to get to know the reader and their interests, and help book match. We need to be relentlessly book matching with our students to make sure that their reading stamina is actually where it needs to be, okay? So, again, my opinion, unpopular opinion, book reading stamina, not a thing at all. All right, here's another one. You're going to come for me in this one. I just know you are. Centers, reading centers, stations, rotations, whatever you call them, completely overrated. Now, that does not mean I do not think small groups are overrated. No, small groups, highly needed. Specifically and most importantly, the teacher-led small group, 100%, 1,000% need those. I'm talking about your traditional centers that so many teachers still feel locked into. And that's the this group of teachers or students is at the teacher table. This group of students is at the zebra station. This group is at the toucan station. And this group is at the ostrich station. And then we rotate every 15 minutes. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, I do that. Like, there's nothing completely wrong with it. I just think there's a lot of other ways that we can use that time more valuably, that's not a word, meaningfully, that's a better word. For example, something that I did in my class that I absolutely loved. 1, take yourself out of the rotation. You should not be in a rotation, all right? The amount of time you spend with your students should not be set to a certain amount of time. If I can meet with a group and get done with reviewing and going through something in 5 minutes, then that's all the time I need with them. If there's another group who needs 20, I'm going to spend 20. So instead, I am pulling students from their stations, and I'm meeting with who I need to meet with, when I need to meet with, and for how long I need to meet with them. That's what it is. It's not a cut and dry thing. I also may not need to meet with a certain group, but once. That's all I need. So if I'm hitting that group every day, like, it seems to be a little bit of wasted time. Okay. Now, what are the other students? They're not rotating. Okay. But my students did small groups in a very different way. We had allotted topics or concepts on different days. So for example, Mondays, like, my lower students were in a group and they were working on phonics. And then my higher kids were working on more like Greek and Latin roots or whatever. And then my, their on-level group or whatever was working on, their spelling patterns or something like that. They didn't rotate. They just used whatever my station time was, and that's what they worked on. So maybe it was 25 minutes. They got that 25 minutes to work on what they needed outside of me, right? And then I pulled them from the groups when I needed them. Now, I never graded anything that they did. They did turn it in, and whatever they got done, I would give feedback on, and it would be good data for me. But I didn't grade it because I wasn't there to monitor and make sure that everything was going right when it comes to, using resources, cheating, staying on task, all that thing, using time wisely. I wasn't monitoring that, so I shouldn't be grading that. And I didn't require them to finish it. So if I'm pulling them out of their station and they only get, 5 minutes in their station, then why is that their fault? They shouldn't have to finish that. So there's a little tweaks here and there that you could do. This is just what I did, but I truly feel that the whole rotation station thing is overrated. There's so many other ways that we could be using our time in our reading block, which, as we know, is not enough time, right? That there's other things we could do to really use our time in a more valuable way. Why is that word hard for me today? All right, I've got another unpopular opinion for you, friends. And I really like this one. This one is, you ready? Differentiation can be damaging. Yes, there is a thing as too much differentiation. I have been in situations where teachers are going to the extreme to personalize education for a student, which, on paper sounds amazing. Yes, I'm going to give each student their own personalized experience. I'm going to meet them all where they are, where their needs are. That's great. But all we're doing is creating more problems. I like to give this visual of differentiation to kind of just show what happens. We have students, okay, let's say this is grade level. We have students who are below grade level. Okay, so what happens is we're trying to catch up this student, right, who's below grade level to get them here. But what's happening with these kids? They're not staying here. They're moving up. They're going up to the next grade level. So all we're doing is this over and over and over. And the reason is because we focus so much on meeting the students' needs that we're not teaching them the grade level content at the same time. Tier 1 instruction, which is grade level content, needs to be taught to all students, regardless of if they're ready for it or not. Because they're going to pick up on some of that. They're going to get it, okay? They may need some extra scaffolding and help, but they're going to get it. up here. Now, let's say a student is like working on, fluency. They are not fluent at all. It takes them forever to read a passage. So if I'm working on only fluency with them for let's say the first 9 weeks of school, I get them here, right? Now the students are up here and I'm still behind. So they missed, everything that I taught in those first 9 weeks to the on-level readers. They're still going to be behind. So we need to make sure that we're teaching Tier 1 instruction at the same time as Tier 2 instruction. Whole group instruction needs to be happening. And yes, it can be longer than 10, 15 minutes. If you are doing your model for a certain amount of time, then we're working together as a class for a certain amount of time, then maybe you break them into partners or groups and we're still working as a whole group together, right? On the same thing. That can be a 20-minute lesson, and I promise you they're going to be engaged, right? If you do it right, they're going to be engaged. So differentiation, it can be damaging. It's all about figuring out in your time, how can you teach Tier 1 and also teach Tier 2 in that same amount of time? Okay. I know there's some of you who probably are like, I just want to throw tomatoes at this woman right now because I am upset with some of the things she said. I disagree, and that's perfectly fine. I am happy if you disagree, and if you want to tell me why you disagree, I would love to hear it, okay? I am open to all the discussions. So leave me some comments below. Tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with. I can't wait to chat with you. But tonight, friends, those are my unpopular reading opinions when it comes to reading comprehension. Do you have any? I don't know. Let me know.